A family of crime. That's what they were, and always will be. Soon, their daughter will see how much things change when a stranger enters their midst. Old Dolio and her parents lie in wait at the bus stop. Old Dolio is keeping an eye on the people there. Her parents are watching those coming in and out of the post office. When the bus comes to pick up everyone, they are the only ones left. Old Dolio's dad, Robert, tells her the coast is clear. Hearing this, she jumps into action. She does a series of evasive maneuvers, so she isn't seen by the cameras. Opening the box, she looks to see if there is a person sorting mail into the boxes. She waits until their back is turned to shove her hand all the way through. Reaching into the box next to hers, she grabs the mail. When she exits, she puts it into her backpack. Her parents wait for her outside the post office. Away from all of the cameras, they go through the mail. There are a few small packages and some basic junk mail. One package contains a teddy bear with a gift certificate. Robert opens the other package and pulls out a nice blue tie. He exclaims that it is a tie of value and is worth a pretty penny. He looks at old Dolio and says that she wouldn't know anything about its worth because she was not of gentle birth. Putting everything away, they are startled by a tremor. It is a small tremor, but they all act scared and stand still. As they walk along, they discuss their new target. Robert tells old Dolio to wear the Catholic schoolgirl costume. He wants her to pull some heartstrings with this next con. Her parents hide as she walks up to the door of their next victim. Old Dolio brings up a watch and says that she almost stepped on it. The man who had lost the watch was surprised that it was just outside his door. It has been missing for a while. He laughs as he puts it on. The man and his wife invite her in. The wife says that old Dolio must be an angel. The man chuckles and says that his wife believes in such things, even though he doesn't. He gives her a gift certificate for a masseuse. He gushes about how his daughter works at a fancy restaurant and is a masseuse on the side. Back outside, her parents berate her for not getting anything. They say that plan A was to not ask for a gift, but plan B was to ask for cash. Robert looks at the gift certificate and recants. He thinks she can get a cash refund for up to $300. Old Dolio knocks on the door of the studio for the masseuse. The masseuse opens the door, and inside is a small room and a massage table in the center. Old Dolio asks if she can get a refund for the massage because she doesn't plan on using it. The masseuse looks at the gift certificate and asks how she knows her parents. She says that she can't refund it. Old Dolio starts looking around the room for something else to barter with. She tries trading the gift certificate for a crystal or the masseuse's stereo. The masseuse is deeply confused by her actions, but answers in a soft voice. Old Dolio decides to go ahead and get the massage. She lays down on the table, fully clothed. The masseuse is even more confused. She tells old Dolio to tell her if she is applying too much pressure. She has to start the massage over and over again. Old Dolio keeps saying that she is applying too much pressure. It gets to the point where she is just holding her hands over her, asking if she is still applying too much pressure. Old Dolio is finally happy with the amount of pressure. She is breathing heavily and gently crying. Her parents come barging in, right in the middle of the massage. They want to know what is taking her so long. Old Dolio hops off the table as soon as they enter the room. She tries to act like she wasn't just getting a massage. Her parents start looking around for things to barter with. They suggest the same things that old Dolio did. Walking home, they talk about all of the scams that they pulled off today. Old Dolio managed to get 6 Vita Fusion giveaways with different email accounts. They also won a free visor. Robert is happy with the outcome of the day. Not bad for a Wednesday. They live in an office building. On the back wall, there is pink-tinted foam coming down. As if in a trance, they all grab buckets and trash cans and scoop it off the wall. Old Dolio and her parents bend down, so as to not be seen. They are walking past their landlord's fence. A woman spots them and tries to talk to them. They are trying to shush her and keep her quiet, but it's too late. Their landlord notices them and asks them when they will be paying rent. They are several months behind and owe $1,500. He indicates that he wants to boot them out and rent the place out to a business. They want to pay the money they owe in installments. They watch as their landlord practically reboots. He states that rent is an installment and continues on about how the leak is very manageable. He asks if they are wiping down the wall at night to prevent mold growth. The woman who called out to them says that she has a job for them. She is willing to pay $20 for old Dolio to take her mandatory parenting class. She just needs the yellow wristband to show that she has gone to it. Old Dolio signs in under the woman's name and sees that it is a positive parenting class. The caseworker hands out 2 sheets and asks them to pay attention to the pink one for now. They go over the pros and cons of breastfeeding. At one point, they discuss the difference that breast crawling can have on a baby. The caseworker puts on a video of a baby being born and crawling on its mom's chest to eat. The moment is so incredibly tender that old Dolio is in tears. She has never been shown such tenderness. The video talks about how putting a baby directly in a crib, instead of allowing the baby to breast crawl, can have negative effects on the child. Later that night, old Dolio is lying awake in her office space. She can't stop thinking about the video she watched. Her phone is in her hands when she stands up. Her mother hears her and asks why she is awake. She hesitantly tells her that she won a 2-way trip to New York. It's non-refundable, but they could use it anyway. She wants to take a trip to New York to bond with her mom. Just the two of them. Her mom changes the subject and asks where she got the toothpick in her mouth. Old Dolio says that some guy gave it to her. Mom angrily states that any man who gives anything wooden to a woman is insinuating that he likes her. Disgusted, she spits out the toothpick. They go back to sleep. The next morning, Old Dolio helps her parents wipe down the walls. They walk up to the landlord and hand him an envelope. He opens the envelope and cries at the contents. There is a money order for $20 in cash, and the tie that they stole. They assure him that they will have the $1,500 in 2 weeks. Old Dolio slows down and says that she has a plan to make the money in half the time. She tells Robert about the trip to New York that she won. If they all fly together to New York, they can scam the airline on the way back. She can fly separate from them and pretend not to know them. She will then claim that the airline lost her luggage. Since she will have traveler's insurance, they will send a check for $1,575. They put the plan into action. On the way to New York, they sit together in a row. The mother is praying and nodding her head. Robert is clenching his hands and slightly shaking. Old Dolio is only slightly handling it better. They are all nervous flyers. This is Old Dolio's first time on a plane. Robert finally speaks up during a bout of turbulence. He wants them to speak and say anything other than prayers. Old Dolio blurts out about the breast crawling she learned about in the parenting class. Right as she finishes her story, the plane levels out. Robert asks her what the point of sharing that was. The mom wonders how a baby would know how to crawl to the mom's chest. With a sigh, the mom asks if Old Dolio is pregnant. Old Dolio doesn't think it could have happened, with them breathing down her neck. No, she isn't pregnant. Robert sniffs her to be sure. They steal all of the stuff left behind when the plane lands. On the ride back, Old Dolio is in an old suit with round rim glasses. She sits slightly away from her parents. Another woman sits next to her them. She is a regular chatty Cathy. She starts talking all about her life. Soon, the parents are engrossed in conversation. Old Dolio is curious about how they are responding to the stranger. She has never had conversations like this with her parents. They don't laugh so easily with her. The stranger pulls out her phone and jokes about how attached she is to it. Robert snobbishly states that it is nothing more than a tool built by the military. She looks at them, thinking they are the strange ones. A flight attendant walks by and offers them drinks. The stranger orders everyone alcoholic beverages. She makes the assumption that the parents are Amish, because they only use alcohol to clean wounds, but they aren't, and down the drinks. Another flight attendant walks by and flirts with the stranger. As he walks away, Robert tells everyone to check their pockets. The stranger is confused and asks why. Robert tells her that this is a common scheme called the bait and switch. Old Dolio watches their interaction. The stranger takes a stab at their profession. She guesses that they are professors, and Robert is all too happy to lie and say yes. She second-guesses herself and asks them what they do. He wonders if she is trustworthy and asks if she believes herself to be so. At the nod of her head, he tells her their heist plan. At the airport, the stranger can't stop gushing at being part of an actual heist. While she is with Robert, Old Dolio is at the lost baggage claim. The lady tells her not to worry and that it is rare for them to actually lose a bag. Old Dolio confirms that if it is lost, she will be getting a check for the claimed amount. The woman assures her that once they are sure that it is lost, she will get a check within 6 weeks. Dejected, Old Dolio rides the bus home. On the bus, she gets a text for her to meet her parents elsewhere. Old Dolio ends up at a bar and sees her parents with the stranger. The stranger offers to get her a menu and uses this time to introduce herself as Melanie. Old Dolio acts a little more cold than usual. She doesn't trust Melanie. Melanie sits next to Robert and Teresa at the table. Robert asks about the check and is mad at what his daughter tells him. He is aghast that he risked his life riding on a plane for a maybe. Robert acts prideful while describing how Melanie was an asset for the heist. Melanie is still riding the high from the airport and is talking quickly. She says that it was just like living out one of the Ocean's 11 movies. As Old Dolio and her parents argue, Melanie goes outside to the restroom. Just her luck, the light is out. She uses her phone to find the right style and sits in the dark. She is finishing up when she gets a call from her mom. Melanie lies and says that she made it home fine. It is apparent where she gets her chattiness from, as her mom talks her ear off. She talks about sending her some items and asks if she is watching the current episode of Antique Roadshow. Melanie manages to get a few words in before hanging up. Melanie approaches the table with a possible heist idea. Old Dolio doubts the merit of the idea immediately. Melanie admits that she lied on the plane about her job. She sells glasses at an optical store. She describes the customers as old and lonely. They usually invite her inside their house and offer her things. She thinks that they could use this as a cover and steal some of the things in their homes. Old people usually have valuables all over the house. Old Dolio is curious about what they would do with the items and how they would sell them. Melanie suggests that they open up a booth at a flea market. Against all odds, Robert and Teresa love the idea. Another tremor hits and Robert freaks out again. He thinks it's going to be the big one. He warns everyone to back away from the table and not to touch anything. He believes everything is alive after a tremor and can electrocute you. His paranoia comes into play, and he talks about how you'd be lucky to only get crushed to death. Melanie jokingly says YOLO, and Robert and Teresa don't get the reference. Walking out of the bar, Melanie asks if she vouches for them. She pointedly looks at old Dolio's parents as she asks. She wants to know if she should hold any fear for her safety. Old Dolio of course says yes, after all, they are her parents. Melanie is surprised to hear this. The next day, Melanie shows them to their first victim. Her name is Sue, and she is a customer of Melanie's. Sue opens the door and warmly greets them. Robert and Teresa are instantly on the lookout for anything they can steal. The woman has a lot of collectibles from England. As she talks about England, Robert steals a check from her checkbook on the counter. They hastily take an exit afterward. Sitting in a diner booth, old Dolio is hastily tracing Sue's signature. Melanie asks why they stole the check, instead of taking items. It's faster and easier this way, says Robert. They cash the check for $650. Anything over $700 will be checked by the bank. Melanie is upset at what they did and wants to leave. Old Dolio grabs her hand and accidentally snags one of her fake nails. The fake nail falls off, and old Dolio is scared that she hurt her. Melanie assures her that they are fake, but is frustrated that she ripped one off. Grabbing her hand, old Dolio carefully rips off the rest of them on her hand. She is extremely gentle about it. Melanie doesn't know what to make of this. On the way home, they stop by a hot tub store. Melanie convinces Robert to buy one, and they go up front to strike a deal with the salesman. They have just enough to put in the required down payment. While they are at the front, old Dolio confronts Melanie about her clothing choices. She tells Melanie to dress more conservatively. The next house that they stop at creeps Melanie out. The owner's name is Abe, and he is a regular who forgets to pick up his glasses. When Melanie knocks, Abe calls out the door is open. He softly says to make yourself at home. Melanie comes to the conclusion that the man is just old and lonely. He misses the sound of a family and wants them to act like they are his family for a bit. So they do. Robert turns on the TV and watches a show. Teresa goes to the kitchen to pretend to make food and asks how Melanie's day was. Melanie sits at the piano and plays for the man. Old Dolio pretends that she is a handyman coming to fix the broken fridge. Melanie and old Dolio have another moment when Melanie pretends to flirt with her. She places her hand on top of old Dolio's in the drawer. Robert motions for old Dolio to check in on the man and see what is in his room. Talking to him makes her realize that he just wants people in his house one last time before he passes on. He is trying to force himself to pass away on the spot. When she tells the others of this, the mood becomes more somber, and they commit to their roles more. It doesn't take long for the man to pass on. She comes out of the room and nods her head that he has passed. She is confused by Melanie's crying. Teresa goes and comforts her and says that old Dolio wouldn't know anything about tender feelings. Teresa says that it is almost time for them to clean the wall, and that if she hurries, she can make it in time. When old Dolio gets home, she sees the check from the airport for $1,500. She is conflicted about what to do. She sees the foam running down the wall and leaves before cleaning it up. Instead, she heads to the parenting class that she went to before. Inside the class, a man is talking about issues he is having with his 3-year-old son. His son is being overly aggressive. The caseworker helps the man uncover the potential reason behind his outbursts. Old Dolio goes next. She pretends that she has a daughter with her name that doesn't know about tender feelings. She explains that the daughter got the name from a homeless man who made it rich. The caseworker talks gently to old Dolio and comforts her. She even lets the woman pet her hair. Old Dolio is crying again. Robert, Teresa, and Melanie arrive home to the foam covering the walls. They get it cleaned up and start filling up the hot tub in the bathroom. Once it is full, Robert tells Melanie it is time for a bath. Melanie is instantly onto him and knows precisely what he wants. She asks him what type of intimacy he was expecting as he undresses. She has no intention of doing anything, but doesn't want to get him riled up. She is shocked when Teresa joins in and indicates that she wants to be a part of it. She runs out of the bathroom right as old Dolio gets home. As Melanie passes old Dolio, Teresa calls her hun. Old Dolio is shocked and angry. Her mother has never called her hun. She starts going off on Teresa. She tells her of how she was never tender with her and never called her sweet names. Teresa snarks at her. She doesn't think old Dolio really wants those things. She says all of the normal things, like making pancakes and giving presents, are fake and shallow. Old Dolio offers her mom $1,500 to call her hun. She wants her to show her some sort of tenderness, just once. But her mom can't. Melanie takes her up on her offer and drags her out of her house. Old Dolio thanks Melanie for taking her up on her offer and giving her a place to stay for a bit. It doesn't take long for Melanie to recognize the signs. She tells old Dolio that she is fixated on her parents, that her parents are her weakness. Melanie makes a list of things to do for old Dolio. Tomorrow, they will go to the store to get the ingredients for pancakes. Melanie sets up a blow-up mattress for old Dolio. She is used to sleeping on the floor with a sleeping bag. Melanie is amused when old Dolio points out the camera system in the grocery store the next morning. Old Dolio questions why she would make the pancakes so small, but likes them nonetheless. Melanie checks another thing off of the checklist. She tells Old Dolio that she isn't to pay her until they get everything on the list done. Melanie has an idea for the next thing on the list: breast crawling. She takes Old Dolio to the restroom of the bar that has a broken light. It is darker in there than in her house. In the middle of Old Dolio doing the breast crawling, another tremor hits. This is the biggest one yet, and it has Old Dolio convinced that they are gone. It isn't until another car shows up that they realize that they are still alive. Stepping out of the bathroom, Old Dolio has a new view of life. She goes crazy admiring everything in sight. Old Dolio's mom calls and leaves a voicemail. They are super worried about her. They don't think she has passed away, but want to make sure that she is okay. Old Dolio finishes the last thing on the list. She dances for Melanie. Melanie turns on music for her. Old Dolio doesn't dance like most people. It is mostly flailing and various evasive maneuvers. There's a knock on the door. Teresa and Robert lay it on thick. They say how worried they were, but understand if she doesn't want to talk to them right now. Melanie warns her that they are lying. When she opens the door, there is a pile of presents. As she opens them, she sees that there is one for each year they didn't get her anything, up until her 18th birthday. Melanie asks if she is 18. Old Dolio tells her that she is 26. She finds a note with an invitation to dinner. Melanie thinks it's a trap, so they set one up for them as well. They put the money in the circuit box and get ready to go. Wearing a pale pink dress, Old Dolio is unrecognizable. They meet her parents at the table. They make small talk, and a piece of cake arrives. They awkwardly sing happy birthday to her. The dinner goes by uneventfully. After dinner, Melanie lets her parents stay at her house. Old Dolio tells Melanie that if they leave the money alone, then they have changed. If they take it, then they haven't changed, and don't love her. If they leave her a third of the $1,500, then nothing will ever change. As they go to bed, they see that the money is still there, and hold on to hope. When Old Dolio and Melanie wake up in the morning, they are shocked at what they see. Old Dolio's parents have taken everything. There is nothing left. The money is gone too. Melanie starts laughing hysterically, and Old Dolio joins in. They have a tender moment while they hold each other. Old Dolio spots the gifts against a wall. They go to the store and return all of the gifts. Old Dolio almost forgets the last gift. It was a necklace. Melanie unclasps it from around her neck, and it gets added to the refund. As the stuff is being rung up, they slowly share a kiss. It is hesitant and perfect.